This video is following me in my week of formal power testing. Testing that you can do at the comfort of your own home or out on the roads rather than lab testing, which I have done previously, and you can find that video down below. So to set the stage, I want to ask a question to you viewers. Do you enjoy formal testing? Like, do you enjoy it when your coach or when maybe yourself, you set that testing week in your calendar and you're like, I'm gonna do this test on Saturday? Or if you're doing critical power like I'm doing, you're gonna do these 3 tests spread out over these couple of days, and they're gonna be playing on your mind and you're gonna be building yourself up to it. I know from personal experience that lots of people actually don't like testing. And when we say testing, you could be testing for, your FTP, you could be testing to find your lactic threshold zones, you could be testing for a variety of reasons. And I think to test nowadays to just find your FTP is a bit of an old-fashioned thought. But I do know that lots of people don't enjoy it. And this week is a good example of me to show you ways in which you don't necessarily have to test as a standalone effort or session. You can weave it with other things to make it a little bit more fun, a little bit more repeatable, and maybe a little less anxiety inducing. Now at the end of the day, you could argue that the way I'm doing it isn't optimal because I'm not going to get the cleanest run at these efforts. I might not produce my best effort for these efforts. I always live by this quote that accurate numbers are better than better numbers. There isn't a perfect time to do it, and there isn't necessarily a perfect way to do it. For example, I could do a test on Monday and I could produce 400 watts, but on Friday, if I'd done the test, I could have produced 410 watts. I mean, let's face it, what test are we doing where we're producing 400 watts? But you get the idea. Like, there isn't a perfect time, and later could be never. Now the tests that I'm doing this week are the critical power tests, where you kind of do a 3-minute, a 5-minute and a 12-minute maximum test spread out on different days. But I am also doing a bonus effort. Yes, because I am that sad. Full gas effort up a certain climb on Zwift. It is halfway up the Ven Top course, which is also known as Vontu. And we're going to be taking approximately a 30 to 40 minute continuous effort or numbers from that effort. Now I don't need to explain to you how many different tests there are out there, and that's not including lab tests, and you can use different ones in different times of years, as long as you don't get too hung up on that number that it gives you, because cycling is much more than that FTP number. So the reason why I'm choosing the critical power testing is because I have something coming up in a couple of weeks that requires me to be able to do power efforts around these sort of time periods. So it allows me to not only practice those efforts, but get a good idea of what I can sustain for them. So if I happen to have to do an effort that is a similar time range, I know exactly what I'm capable of doing because I've tested for it. So I'm going to use this video to take you through some of the sessions this week and to give you some real world feedback and examples of how you can do these sessions. I know that lots of you out there don't enjoy doing any form of testing, and this is what I want to kind of get across a little bit in this video, is that you don't have to put so much pressure on yourself, because there's a few ways to get everything out of yourself. For those of you that race regularly, whether that be on Zwift or in real life, for those of you that like to go out on a weekend and push yourself against your mates, you might already be testing without even knowing it. However, the types of people who follow a structured training plan for a long period of time, who don't end up pushing themselves to their maximum for these efforts very often, and that's, I feel like, where most of the anxiety comes from. And so I want to try and create a week this week where I can be a bit relaxed about it and I can almost forget about the outcome and just give it what I've got and see what the results bring. So I'm going to take you along for that. Okay, so for the sake of the length of this video and to keep you all watching. I'm just going to quickly summarize what's happened over the last 2 days in my first 2 power tests. Okay, so the first power test was the 5-minute power test. The result from that test was 421 watts. How did I perform that test? Well, plain and simply, I entered an event on Zwift that did the Bologna climb. And I rode to the bottom of the Bologna climb and then I just sent it as hard as I could up there. So even though I was in a race, I literally just used the climb as a bit of motivation with other people in the race as well to just push myself to get to the top of that climb as fast as possible. So that was on Monday. On Tuesday, I then did the 3-minute power test and that came out at 452. So 31 watts more than my 5-minute power test. How did I do this one? Well, same kind of thing. I headed to a climb in Zwift in Watopia and I just sent it up that climb that took around about 3.5 minutes to do. But I ended up pulling the pin after 3 minutes because usually when I do a 3-minute power test, I'm left absolutely flattened after it. Now, where do these tests stack up against my best ever? Well, in terms of watts per kilo, they're not even close because this time of year, you can understand why. In terms of raw wattages, they're not actually that bad. The 3-minute one, my best ever is about 480 watts. So that's a good 30 watts shy. But the 5-minute one wasn't as bad as I thought. That's about 25 watts shy. So now, today is Wednesday. So we're halfway through the power testing week. We've done 2 efforts. We've got 2 efforts left. The other 2 are longer. We've got the 12-minute test tonight and then we've got the 30 to 40-minute test tomorrow. Now, why have I done the 5-minute test first as opposed to the 3-minute or the 12-minute or the longer one? I don't think it really matters. I think it comes down to personal preference. So even though these are tests and they're not entirely like holding back, there is pacing involved. Some of that is internal, some of it is external, like seeing a power number, seeing a heart rate number, but it's still nice to have something to aim for. So it gives me an idea of what I can do for the 3-minute. So for the 12-minute, I have a educated guess as to what we're capable of doing tonight, and that's going to be in the area of about 380 to 400 watts, which is a big window. On a good day, we could get that upper range, but on a mediocre day, we could be that lower range. So that's why I'm giving myself that scope this evening for the 12-minute effort. And then what's going to be cool about once we've done that 12-minute effort, we're going to be able to plug all this into a bit of an algorithm and we're going to be able to come up with a number that should be what I'm capable of doing for that 4th and final test, which will be kind of interesting. It's kind of an interesting experiment to be involved in, and there's more to testing than just trying to find an FTP number. There's more to testing than just trying to get a better number, whatever that number may be. It allows you to have practical information to then take into your cycling performances, whether it be a race where you're doing a 5-minute maximum or 6-minute maximal effort or 15 maximal effort, or to plan training sessions that are going to be specific to what you've done. In other words, these 5-minute numbers that we have here, so if we do marginally less, we're capable of repeating and creating a training session from that. Okay, I've just finished the 12-minute effort, and man oh man, they don't get any easier. Quick summary before I get off. 12 minutes, 401 watts, but I don't know if I said, but I'm using my power meter on my crank, which is a little bit lower reading, but it's the one I use always when I'm outdoors. So if I'm going to compare my data that I'm collecting with this with my outdoor data, I need to use the same power meter, which I am. So that was more like 390, so 10 watt difference. So yeah, I'm stoked with that. That's awesome, considering my best ever is in the range of like 420 watts for like 12 minutes. like to do just under 400 in January, I'm happy. Wow, last night was tough, but it's about to get tougher because tonight is it's just to see how we can use the sort of numbers we've collected to really progress and to do more than what FTP is just there to do, which is like for most people it's just there as a number and they just base their fitness off of that number. It's much more than that. So here's our test results. Okay, so this is a screenshot taken from a spreadsheet that, shout out to Tom Bell, fellow hill climber, also the owner of High North Performance, created this awesome spreadsheet where you can input your data from your critical power testing, which is these 3 tests. So we have up here at the top of the red arrow, we've got my 3 test results. As you can see, the power outputs are there as well, and the time duration in seconds. We've got the 3 test solution, which basically is the sum of everything that you've put in, and it spits out a number for your critical power, which is the power you can produce anywhere between 30 and like 40 minutes. And for me, it's 366.7 watts. The 366 is basically going to be my FTP. But of course I can't sustain that for an hour. Now, cue the people saying, but FTP is your 1 hour power. Of course, that myth has been debunked for, well, the last couple of years at least. Like, it's certainly not your 1 hour power. Unless, of course, you're really methodically trained to stretch it out as long as possible. And you may not even achieve that 1 hour. It might only be 52 minutes, 51 minutes. Some people can go beyond the hour. But that takes training. Anyway, I digress. We can now use this data to go down below and input a time duration in seconds, which I've done, 1200 seconds, which is also 20 minutes, and it spits out a number 380 watts, which is pretty decent for me this time of year. Now, what else can we do with this? Well, here I have the graph from WKO, but it's very much similar to any graph you'll have on Strava, Training Peaks, you name it. It's your power duration curve. Now, if you look at the yellow line, which is my best effort over the last 30 days, and you have the red line, which is a modeled graph, basically, of what it thinks I can do. So my 3 minute, 5 minute, and 12 minute numbers are in there. You can see where like the effort ends and there's a drop, the effort ends and there's a drop. There's this space after the 12 minutes and up to 30 minutes or even 45 minutes or even an hour where I haven't done an effort there. So that's what I'm going to be doing tonight, and we're going to see if the climb tonight on Zwift, which is going to take approximately 30 to 40 minutes of solid climbing, if I can use the number I've collected from the critical power testing, which is 366 watts, and this modelled FTP number here of 30 minutes at 357 watts. We're going to take the middle value around about 360, and we're going to see if we can actually sustain 360 watts for the 30 or so minutes that it's going to take to climb this mountain. And if it does, it's going to plug that gap and plug that hole and give us a much more clear picture of that power duration curve. And it may even model us a new FTP. Not that that matters because we can't get hung up on that one number, but you can see how training is testing and testing is training. Oh my word. The fun effort, the final effort. Did I just say fun effort? I did, didn't I? A wonderful, pretty graph on Zwift. Took me 40 minutes to do the whole climb at an average power of 353 watts. Now for 30 minutes, my peak 30-minute power was 354, 1 watt more. And for 20 minutes, it was 356. That is a satisfying bit of pacing. Now obviously pacing of this length comes with a heck of a lot of practice. Now, because I love you all so much, I'm going to break one of my biggest rules, which is staying in kit for longer than 10 minutes after finishing a ride. To summarise, how did these all play out? And was this final effort that we did tonight well predicted by the model? Remember, the model predicted that we'd be able to do around 357 watts for 30 minutes. And we managed to do 354 watts for 40 minutes. So that's pretty incredible accuracy. Now don't forget, that prediction came from the power duration curve modeled number, and it also came from those 3, 5 and 12 minute efforts feeding into that. So to summarize, there is no real perfect test, but there's something satisfying about knowing that whichever test you do choose, as long as you keep doing that test and you have faith in that test and you do it consistently and it's easily repeatable, you can have pretty accurate numbers. And accurate numbers are better than better numbers for the most part. So that's going to end this experiment. I hope you found it fascinating, or maybe it's raised even more questions. But needless to say, the efforts that I've produced have blown my expectations out of the park. It's a good place to be in January, and I hope your cycling is giving you the same results. So that's going to end this video. Thank you so much for watching. Like and subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you in the next one.